Okay. See if this is working okay. How does this sound? Okay, not bad. YouTube connected. There we go. Okay. Ad break ends in 2 minutes 30. Watch me lurking. Hello. Have you used C# identity? First, are you actually in the ads, or are you not seeing the ads? And which components are you looking at specifically? Like integrating it with a provider? Okay, good. I use Auth0 for my authentication pieces of this application stack. So I am, when I'm starting, I'm adding auth in. What do we do? Add auth, add authorization, add auth0. So I'm using JWT and pulling it in there so that I get the identity components there. So then when I'm in my actual endpoints, I can validate the user, etc. So Auth0 is my identity provider in this case. I can try and answer. Identity and auth is something that I've actually managed to not go near heavily in a 20-year career because I have I've worked in systems that have kind of had either hand rolled and then gone to this sort of system where they've externalized it, or there's just no auth. If I have multiple roles to access the controller, okay. How can I define it? So I'm not using a traditional controller based thing here, right? I'm using fast endpoints in this case, but the thing is the same. So if I do roles, I can specify, support. I just have policies in this case. If you're using controllers, you do, it's something similar. New solution, empty, ASP.NET Core, Web API. Let's do that. New window. So, yeah. Come on. Oh, because it does minimal API. I forgot about that. Let's go back and do that again. New solution. Do not use top level statements. MVC web app. Okay, that'll be more controller based. New window. Ooh. So when you're using controllers, you can authorize the method, or you can authorize the actual controller. So I can say authorize there, and this gives me some options, and I can do a policy, or I can do roles. So if I do roles equals admin, support, user, etc., right? That is going to pull that. Now, when you configure that, and if I go back to my main app, in your program, what you're going to do is you're going to set up the authorization, and in here, you can do configure.add, what is it? Add policy. There's a way of adding roles, so add policy, sample, configure dot role, require role. There's a way of configuring, probably in there, in that auth. I'm not using roles, I'm using policies, so I'm kind of using permissions. But you pull them from here, and I've done it, where have I done it before? Is it the same? So this stuff is all the same, right? So this stuff doesn't change. I'm just trying to figure out where I've added roles before, because I haven't used roles in a while. In this application, I'm specifically adding permissions and then rolling them up into policies. And then I can specify a policy, which is a grouping of permissions. But again, it's the sort of stuff I just do. And then, so this includes is my stuff that I'm just adding in. Builder. Require role. Yeah, so there's no roles. Oh, okay, yeah. So the roles will come in with a token. If you're feeding roles back. So the claims principal will have roles on it. I'm wrapping this to try and kind of clean up these permissions things. So these permissions, I'm just saying, hey, you need to have these group of permissions to work, and here I've kind of defined these in my API. This isn't final. I've still got to learn a little bit more about how to do this, but I use permissions like this. So I'm saying, okay, you can create tickets, you can delete tickets, etc. And then in here, I'm saying, hey, use this policy, right? Fast endpoints is my preferred way of building APIs, because it does allow me to just keep these methods clean and not have them dumped in controllers. But ultimately, you're working with the same sort of stuff, right? So once you've got the authentication, authorization stuff in there, you can specify roles, and you can do policies, right? You can say policy is support user, right? Something like that. So you can still wrap up policies into permissions, depending on what you're using to provide those those scopes. In this instance, what's happening is when I get the token back in the auth, that was the wrong thing to do. I want to go over here, network, where are you, token? So if I go to IO, and I paste this in, so I've actually got auth0 is handing me back the permissions this user has. So I'm kind of assembling the policy based upon the permissions when I get it come through the authentication. So it's giving me the policy that it lands in. It does mean that you can have the same permission appear in two policies, right? But I've yet to review that. If you're using something like auth0, roles are particularly difficult. This is not simple anyway. You have to modify auth0 to send this back. Well, I have to modify auth0 to send this back. Permissions it will send. Roles it will not send by default, especially not in the access token. But yeah, you can define policies and roll up permissions into policies, and that's a way of doing it. But again, I'm not. This is kind of a weaker area of my skill set because it's something that I don't often spend time with. So I don't get the. I'm not going to get the terminology right all the time, or I'm not going to get the wording correctly. It's like same how claim works. Yeah, I mean the claim it's still a claim, right? You still say, hey, do you have this policy? But in the code, you kind of all I'm doing here is wrapping up my claims, right? So I'm looking for, I'm adding the policy, and I'm building the claims. And if it's not in the policy info, this is coming through as this is just my stuff, and these are the claims. So I'm saying you have to have a tenant and his permissions to make up this policy, right? So I'm just validating that in that extension method to try and, it was just to try and kind of keep that readable and repeatable because I've kind of moved these things around. But you have to have the tenant and you have to have these permissions, and it just matches them all. And that's what adds that claim in. So, but that's how I'm achieving it. But ultimately, when you get to the actual code, it's just adding the attribute and saying, here's the policies that I want to allow in here. You know, so if you have an endpoint that's, if you can read something you're allowed in it, it doesn't matter which, then you could have a policy that wraps that up, I suppose. So I think that's another piece of the design that comes along later. So. Planning. I don't. The Microsoft documentation is pretty comprehensive on that sort of stuff, but I don't have any specifics. Again, I'm kind of winging it a little bit here with the stuff I'm doing because again, I've kind of put permissions in to test them right now. I've yet to review what my permissions and policies will look like in the long term, and also right now I have 4 or 5 APIs, and then across those APIs, those policies, etc., should be shared or built. So I'm trying to learn how to do that. But the Microsoft C# authorization policies, policy-based authorization. Yeah, this gives you, because you can do things like age requirements and stuff. Same what I'm currently working on. Yeah. But right now, realistically, all I care about is that I'm authenticated because I need a token. I need a tenant. That tenant identifier is the thing I care about the most because that's how I organize my data. So when you log into the application, it sets the tenant that you are, or it will set the tenant that you are using, because if you have multiple tenants, that's a story in the future to be prompted, hey, which tenant are you actually logging into? And then configure the tenant from there. So yeah. Okay, so the focus for today there's a lot of moving parts. To develop an application right now is it's hard, right? You've got a lot of different pieces moving around, doing all sorts of things. So I don't know how you know it all, right? And talking of that, the client side, for me, this is a definite weaker spot. So what I'm going to do today, what I aim to do, and I tried to finish this up last night, but two little puppies wanted to be played with, is I wanted to get this form working, then try and put it behind the API gateway, and then look at how I might introduce the NGRX to this component, these sets of components, and try and figure out how those pieces come together. So the reason I want to use NGRX, I am going to, why did you not do dark mode? There you go. Dark mode. Yeah, and then a big big white panel there. I'm going to be building this application, and there's going to be a lot of information flowing back and forth, right? If I just stick with traditional, here's a component, it goes to an API, it gets its data, I'm going to have to do a lot of stuff to make sure that the application is kind of responsive, because the way the application lays out is a little bit, where are you? Because of the read-write difference, the data is not going to be available if I save it until later. So having the stores and stuff in NGRX is going to save me that. Yeah, I believe it is. Yeah. I haven't used it in an application properly before. Spent some time trying to learn about it a couple of years ago, but didn't actually get to implement it because the team I was working with really couldn't fathom how it was going to apply. And I think now looking back, I think the design of the application really didn't favor that practice. But in this application, I am separating read from write. I am separating those actions, and I think it's a little bit more beneficial in this case. Why is that monitor flickering? Be great. So what I'm focused on right now is just kind of experimenting with those pieces, right? So I need to, I'm going to pull this form out because it has some behavior that I want to be wrapped up. Make sure it saves to the API that it should save to, so that I can see a new planning item added. And then I'm going to try and introduce NGRX to try and say, hey, well, the screen is backed off the store. The store will contain these items. When I hit create here, the store gets updated and adds it, so it will display here, but then it will go off and save it in the background, and then ultimately it will load in behind the actual updated data, right? Because the challenge we have there is it has to go into kind of a dirty state because there's no IDs. So I'm not sure about how to achieve that, unless I need to add a correlation ID or something like that, but we'll see. Currently, I'm just using a bunch of unit of work generics. Yeah. So the patterns I'm using in this application, I'm using mediator to send the commands. I'm using Ardalis's specifications library, which gives me a repository. So I can ask for a repository of any single object, and I can write specs to get the actual data. It keeps the code a little tidier, and my specifications, if I need a note by its identifier, I can pass them in and build these specs. So no unit of work stuff. When I'm in the application, in the use case, the register organization process, this creates a transaction because the entire thing needs to roll back if it but these individual commands get fired and then processed. And if they succeed, it publishes a bunch of events that then get listened to, domain events that get listened to, and then publishes integration events to publish that data. And that's what this diagram is really showing. It's saying, hey, well, if I add a planning item, once it's been saved to this database here, it then publishes to Kafka, and this consumer over here reads that, pulls it into a read database, and then the GraphQL API has that available. So ultimately what I want to lean into is the fact that GraphQL can have sockets as well, so that the client can actually, when it's the store can be updated by a updated socket connection from GraphQL and say, hey, you've got some more data. Okay, there you go. Here's your data. And that way that stays, kind of that data flows in the right direction then. But now I'm thinking about that update case where I add something to my store. I need a correlation ID, which is going to be a challenge. Unless I kind of put it in a dirty state and then update it behind. But these are the things I need to learn, right? So let's add that extra field before I move that form over. Hey, Phil Schnabel, how you doing? So planning items, we need another form. Really good, good to hear. We need another form component, and this is going to be a date, planning item, review date. Being very explicit about my my names here, purely just because I'm review date, go here, go there. Okay, not the worst I've seen, not the best I've seen, but it works. Nobody asked, but I did a really nerdy presentation Friday. Nice. Is this your what was it? The Tiny Xy thing. How did the presentation go? Cool things should be celebrated. It says about building small EXEs. I think I've pulled a DVI cable or something too tight. Oh, not DVI, DisplayPort cable too tight somewhere. I think they liked it. It looked like it, and the organizer was very happy. He wanted a nerdy presentation. Cool. And that you got. Nice. Hey. That's now in reality, what would that be useful for? Or is that just having fun and reducing the size? Is there a practical application there? Or is it just a thought experiment? Gotcha. So is it the minimal amount the application can actually launch and do something? But I write 4KB, right? So it's fitting as much code, as much productivity as you can in as little space as possible, but have it still executable. That's yeah, yep, yep. No lengthy identifiers there, I would imagine. So Opening a window, initializing OpenGL, and set up the audio device. That's basically 1K right there. Ah. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to take this and cut that out. Now this is going to be a form. Machine code isn't that compact. Huh. And then this is going to need that means that is going to not do that. So this is going to be an add planning item component. Machine code isn't that compact and stupid functions too long names. Appreciate function named A now. Yeah, I don't think at that sort of program size you're looking at maintainability necessarily or readability. Like I'm using probably more in a chunk of code here than you use in an entire program. So, open planning item form. So we need to do add planning item, and then add planning item form. No, it's not very useful for prod code. Yeah, it's that's not why you're doing that sort of stuff. Add that component. Little flies. At the same time, can be good as a reality check when we have hello world in React that is 500 meg download. Why? Yeah. I created a Lambda function the other day for the first time, and it had a 14 meg node modules, and all it did was make an HTTP request and then loop through the result and make some more HTTP requests, and that's all it did. But it was a 14 meg file, so you can't edit that in the Lambda tools in the web. You have to then have all the CLI and stuff, so it adds more complexity just to even test that function. Well, you know, with a bit of a research, I could probably figure out which libraries I actually need to use and see how to trim things. But again, it's another. Most developers aren't doing that, right? Most developers aren't concerned about that size because it's just easy, right? 13 meg, that's nothing. But for making some requests, that seems very excessive. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a method. No, I'm going to create a method. Open planning item form. And this is going to be a method on here that's going to be open. And this is toggle this dot. So now we're going to need a nested. DD agent is 140 meg compressed, basically receive a metric and then aggregate and send forward. Yeah. We ran off. No worries. I appreciate it. You know, I'm going through this process, right? And I'm adding client code. And the problem is these days to be full stack is hard enough, right? but you're constantly moving. If you're trying to do this sort of app, you're constantly moving between components that you're not going to be very familiar with. And the bloat and the risk of introducing problems all over the place just increases the more we do that. And, you know, I could pull in a load of libraries that when I make this a production app have a massive security risk to me, but I don't know how to check for them because it's not my area of expertise. So I have to learn a whole load more things to make it efficient. And in reality, most applications go out there and yeah. Hey, do you use something like Spark Proxy or Spark services during development? Actually, I'm not now. Because I'm using Angular 17 and the template hasn't been updated. So actually, I'm not using the proxy stuff. So I don't launch it from within Rider. I tried getting it to work to launch the proxy, but the way that Angular launches right now doesn't seem to be functional that way. So I tried setting it to do it, but it wouldn't do it in Angular View. Yeah, so what I'm doing here is I'm actually just using WebStorm to launch the Angular client because it all launches with inside of here, right? So I can just keep it in here and I don't need to worry about the proxy because that's the way I'm doing it. And by the way, Sally the Goose, I don't know if you saw, but I did make a video for Mediator, as I said I would do. How I'm using it compared to using services, etc. So if you get the chance, I'd appreciate you checking it out, because I think it was you that mentioned why use Mediator. It's about 29 minutes long, but I show here's how you would do it with a service. Now here's how you introduce Mediator. Well, I actually show how you'd use it using minimal API, then extracting that code into a service, and then taking that and then moving it to something like Mediator and creating the commands and stuff. So if you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know why. And if you think there's something else I could do differently, I would love to know. But I did make it. We had a security issue last week. There was a combination of a big dependency we didn't fully understand, and we thought it handled an issue which it didn't. So we were incompetent, but it is a lot to learn. Yeah. You don't know those things though. That's the thing. You don't know the things that you're including when you're doing these sorts of things, when you're adding these libraries in. You're kind of relying upon these checks, and that's why tools like GitHub now kind of monitors node modules and says, hey, there's security risks here, and tries to help you along. And NuGet packages, it will kind of tell you, hey, these are deprecated, or these have some security problems. So that video was helpful. You introduced me the Mediator library. Numbers are huge, especially the allocation. Yeah, using Mediator. I didn't want to discourage Mediator, but I've learned a little bit more about how Mediator works, and yeah, it's a bit better. Rumbly Geek, thank you very much for the lurk. Appreciate it. That was nice. Thank you for making it. Yeah, the sound isn't the best. I had issues with my microphone, it seems, and so I tried to cut out as much typing as possible because it was very audible. But if there's interest in more videos like that, if there's things I use on stream that you would like to know more about, I'm happy to make the content. I'll try and do better at the actual production value. But that was 5 hours of my life yesterday, so yeah. I tried. So let's add that. This needs to go in. Oh no, it's already in there. So I need to get that component, right? Let's slide over. This is the parent item. So in here, we're going to do view child. That's going to be a slide over, and that's going to be a slide over, and that's slide over Y component. So we're trying to make the slide over Y component just the thing that brings out the screen. It has a title and a subtitle, etc. And then you put the form inside of it. So that's what we're kind of aiming for there. Slide over dot. So this dot slide over dot toggle slide over. And over here now, that should be open. So this should build add planning item form. Open planning item form. I know it's a form here, that's fine. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Come on. It does not exist on add planning item component. Okay, so that's because the code on the other side. Oh, yeah, that's why. Slide over. Planning. Okay, so we still have our form. It's still open and close it. That's good. So the reason I'm going with this design, by the way, this slide out design, for the most part, I'm tinkering with UI. I'm not trying to set something in stone here. I'm not worried about too much about, oh, it's perfect, it's doing everything it needs to be. The UI UX componentry is not really my focus right now. Do you have videos about setting up policy claim principle? I do not yet. Some of that content will be on the stream, I believe. All my videos go to YouTube. All the streams go to YouTube, and have done for the last couple of months. But that would be a hard thing to do. And so when I get to that component, when I've gone through it and actually implemented it for real, then I probably would make something specific. But yeah, it's if I'm being very honest, the act of making a video about something brings out the imposter syndrome very badly. It definitely makes me question, okay, do I really understand this? Because I have a tendency to understand how to use something, but I might not be able to use all the right terminology to describe it, or I might struggle to be saying, hey, this is the pattern, this is the design. So sometimes I have to just go through it and then show it being used practically. So I will keep it in mind. There are other people, so there is a Discord link below. There are other people who have gone through identity and stuff that may be able to assist more if you have more specific questions. So the Discord is somewhere. There's definitely a few people who are pretty experienced, and I would recommend dropping in there and seeing. You may get something, you may not, but it is worth it if you can get in there. And I do apologize for any added security measures that you may disagree with. Last week was a challenging week as I got botted hard, and so I'll lock things down a little bit more this week. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm breaking this form out, right? So the slide over behavior I want to have generally, right? But the actual form doesn't belong to this screen. I kind of just need to know, hey, this is completed, etc., so I can reload, etc. I'm trying to put the form, the slide out again is its own control, which I'm then nesting a form inside of. So here we have the slide over, we have this stuff. This is our form. Yeah. So let's go and start adding those pieces. I'm here now. Can you start over? Absolutely. Yeah, I'll I mean, I'm practically doing that anyway, so it's fine. What would you like to know? Good day. How are you doing? Okay, so we need public add planning item form group equal form group equals new Let's see how I did this in step 1. We create a form group. Then we create a bunch of controls. Then we created our form group here. Okay. I wonder what the generic on the form group is for. Let's do it that way anyway. No. That needs to be that. Actually, that doesn't, that's redundant because I'm in the add planning item. So let's not make it overly complicated, right? Just for the sake of it. It's not signed up to form group any. That's fine. That's going to complain. It's going to be set later. This is what I believe that is. So we can do on init. And then we can do implements on init. Then we actually need to implement on init. Cease into the backline and watches from the back of the room. Canny, thank you very much for the look. I know there's a CTO stream going on, but I need to be productive as well and get my stuff done. So I am streaming at the same time as people I would like to watch stream as well. This dot form group equals new form group, right? So then we need the controls. So private, actually no, I think they need to be public as well if memory serves. So anyone joining the stream, by the way, if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. I'm more than happy to discuss what I'm doing here, show more about what I'm doing, give you an idea of what I'm working on and why I'm working on it. You know, so don't feel that you have to just sit and watch what I'm doing. I am about sharing what I'm doing. Public. Title. Form control. String. Equals new form control string. Validators dot required. Public. Why don't you like that? No way you don't like that. So that's conflicting with something. Oh, it's because it's... That's why I don't like that. Up. Description. Form control equals new form control. String. Validators dot required. And public. Review date. Form control equals new form control. Date. Will that allow me to do that? Yep, I currently stream hop a lot to share my attention to everyone for a couple of minutes. Okay, look into my coming on the first letter. Nice. Yeah, I do apologize. It's new date. Does that allow that? Little bug. I don't know where they keep coming from. Title, description, review date. This. Oh no, I need to do title. Description equals this dot description, and review date equals this dot review date, because I gotta bind it to the form. Go over here. Okay, so we haven't broken anything yet. Now when we go over here, hey, on YouTube, I'm gonna try Yevis Yiprak. I can call you anything different. I can pronounce your name correctly if you'd like that. I will try. But welcome. Hello. How are you doing? I am currently working on adding a form to my Angular application, and it is part one of today's stream, and I'll be working on learning some new technologies soon. If you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to share them, and I will try and answer. The only rules are it has to be kind of on topic. I'm happy to help people with questions I can answer, but I don't generally divert the stream entirely. So now we need to add in this control. This is form control equals title. I believe this will work. Form control equals description, and form control equals read date. That should bind them properly. And then I should be able to just put them in here. So this dot title dot value. We should be able to see that work. So if I type in something here, there we go. So we're seeing the form control bound. That's what I'm validating there. Now, this is going to be a challenge, right? When I close it, I'm going to have to reset everything. So let's go over here, and we probably need a couple of events here. So let's have a think about how we do these. So input public on open event emitter any equals new event emitter any. Did you know koi fish always travel in groups of 4? If attacked, koi A, B, and C will scatter, leaving behind a decoy. That's an awesome joke. That's very good. I just realized you're using AngularJS. Well, I'm using Angular, not AngularJS. They kind of step themselves away from the JS part when they moved to Angular 2. So it's Angular. So this is Angular 17. This is the latest version of Angular. Yeah. Input public on closed event emitter any equals new event emitter any. The last version I used as Angular was version 8. Yeah, there's a lot changed in this version, that's for certain. If this dot is slider, if not, this is slide over. So I've toggled it to off. Then this dot on closed dot emit. Let's go with this for now. Else this dot on open dot emit this. The reason I'm doing that is I want to say, okay, well, over here, on closed equals form closed. Create. Think that form closed. And again, the reason I want to do that is I want to say this dot form group dot reset. That should reset the entire form. Nope, that's not how to do that. Why don't you like that? Unclosed. Just ask TV Gamer about versions of PHP. This is the Mr. Jones tries to get a rise out of the streamer. So let's remove that. Did Angular implement reusable components? Same how React. So yes. So now you don't need to have a module for everything. So I can create a shared component here. So these components here are standalone components. They were introduced in Angular 15, I believe, and then have become standard in Angular 17 as kind of the way. So I just say standalone true. Now this component doesn't have a module. It can just be built and deployed as is. So yeah. So I have shared pieces over here that I would want to use between multiple modules. So I don't have to pull in an entire module of things if I just want to control. I'm trying to refamiliarize myself, so my layout might not be meaningful. Yeah, that's the thing why I left Angular at that time. Yeah. So right now there is so I have a module for the planning because that's going to be, you know, my routes for planning are all off of here ultimately, and the layout and stuff is in here. So yeah, modules would be planning, stories, reports, etc. And then I have, so I'm trying to organize things. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get used to the organization. I'm sure this won't be the final organization of how this all works. Yeah, I did use event emitter somewhere else. Where did I use it? Selects probably. Actually, this does it this way, and then I just call that. So let's go and do it that way. Import selected on change. They're privates. They're not. They're actually parts of. I did use event emitter somewhere. Buttons. Nope. When I use event emitter, probably landing. Yeah, registered. Okay, so I use output registered, event emitter boolean, and then in the landing component I have registered. Okay, there we go. That is why forms. That's why that's on closed. And then that is an output, not an input. That would be more sensible, wouldn't it? That they are outputs. So then that would reset the form on close. So let's go back here. Cannot find name output. That is because I haven't included it. Slide over. So again, the slide over is an actual component I'm building because I don't want to necessarily put it into a group of behaviors or module as such. It's kind of just a component that I can do the slide over from. So I can go here and do this, and now the slide over is the part, and then I add the form inside of it. Okay, so if I do this and go, this is a title, and go and hit cancel, when I hit back, yeah, it's all reset. So that's why I did that. Okay. So binding, when we create, kind of need a planning service. So let's add a new schematic for a service, and we start to move towards our I'm not doing unit testing on the client side, primarily because this is going to be hard enough for me as is building this application as, you know, someone who hasn't touched Angular in a while. So I'm going to have to get used to using Angular for a while. And then on top of that, I'm going to have to make sure that I am moving things around and changing, organizing the application differently as I build this out, right? This is just a kind of, it's not a prototype. It is what I want the application to kind of lay out roughly like, but it's not a perfect representation of what I want it to be. So I'm going to use this screen to kind of get the foundations of the NGRX stuff in there. And then as I build on top of them, as I start to rearrange things and move things around, then maybe I can look at how to unit test on the client side. I do want to look at Playwright. I do want to look at running tests as integration tests, end-to-end tests, etc. Because I've got a feeling that this application is going to be pretty big. And as a one-person show, this is going to be quite the challenge in the next 4 to 5 months. Dot Fox, hello. How you doing? How'd the stream end? I saw you rated into C2I. I was looking in both of you. Code goes pretty well right now. I'm doing okay. Just too much having those unit tests, but for the sake of security purpose. You know, there's a whole bunch of reasons why you might want to get the, add unit tests into the client side. So it's but it's just too much to mentally take on right in this second, right? I'm building an application. I'm building the entire back-end stack. I'm doing the front end. I'm trying to make the front end stronger and more dynamic, etc. So if I have to learn unit testing practices on the client at the same time, it's going to slow me down. And I know me very well, and I know that I will get bored, very bored, if I get stuck on something that I feel I should understand or whatever. So I'm going to keep myself moving forward with the fun things. Yeah. Good. Thanks for hanging out. Had to bring out first characters to Everdor to say goodbye. Felt like the right time to end. There's a lot all at once. Oh. That game is just, it's fascinating. It's very, very crazy. But yeah. Unit tests for front end and another unit testing for back end. So back end unit testing I'm a little bit more comfortable with. So there are unit tests in the back end, right? I do have, let's see if it'll run it while the application is running. Board frustrated, keep the momentum going. Absolutely, yeah. So I do have 150 tests on the back end right now. So the application does have some stuff, but there is a lot of pieces moving in the back end, and this is where I'm more comfortable. Front end, yeah, that's constantly going to be a challenge. Okay. Yeah. There's there's a lot of technologies I need to play with here. I need to play with things like Playwright. I think I have a tab open on Playwright, right? Maybe. No, I have lots of tabs open. Yeah, writing tests in Playwright, right? So I've got, how do I do this? And again, it's starting to build that understanding of, okay, what does a Playwright test look like? How do I integrate that into my application? So there's all these different moving parts, and I've got to figure out the logic, figure out all these different things. So it's when it gets more frustrating and feels like banging your head against the wall. Absolutely, this isn't exactly how I want it to be. I've got to get myself stuck. And you've got, to say you are a full stack developer these days is a hard challenge, if I'm honest. I would say that I'm full stack capable, but I am not a full stack developer. So yeah, I'm way happier on architecture and design than I am, or systems design, I suppose, rather than necessarily architecture. But yeah, just watched the video, it was great, learned a lot. I like that you showed it without Mediator first. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was I try to make the video the way I would want to see it, right? Like, here's how you might do something because you've probably done it this way, right? And then build out on it, because most demos stop at that API layer. And here's how, and then you end up with the database context added into your API layer all the time. And it takes that leap to know to do it differently. So I kind of tried to show it the way I would want to see it. Which probably reminds me, being that I don't have any bots running now. Thank you to a horrible person from the other day for doing that to me. I probably should make sure I link to the video more and promote it a little bit more. Shareable link. So the video in question is this video using mediator library to smooth your application. I use it extensively in this application. Yeah, I'm always looking for ideas on videos because I don't want to make videos just because I think I want to make them. I'd like to make videos that assist with content I produce on the stream. So if you have ideas, you have questions about what I'm doing, you'd like to know a little bit more about how to use Kafka, or you'd like to use more unit testing and things, and my way of describing things helps you, then I will try and endeavor to make a video focused on something. So if you drop in the Discord or even in the stream, if you have an idea that you'd like to see for a video, you know, once I get to it lurking, then going to do something like this, the scopes and the permissions, etc., is definitely something I would look at. But you know, so I'm always open to suggestions on that stuff, because it's, you know, video content that's just rambling on about an opinion about how something should work is not necessarily helpful. Trying to show it practically used is hard, because obviously it's in the context of an application when you're using it practically. So I'm trying to meet that balance. I'm going to take a break for anyone. But I'll be right back. Okay, my apologies for that. Not the intention to be that long, but thank you for bearing with me. Sorry. Okay. I had to, the flickering on the right-hand side monitor was driving me crazy. So I wanted to get rid of it. And it seems when I move the standing desk, the cable kind of wobbles out a little bit and then starts flickering, and then I catch it in the corner of my eye. Okay, so where am I next? So what I want to do is add a service. Now I've got an interceptor, so the token will be added into the call. So I can just add this form. Right now, every single service is going to be behind a different API because the registration service, the way this application is built, this is the API for tenant management. So this is where register gets called, right? So when I go to register, I go into post here, and this is registration, right? We've proven this part works. When I'm creating a planning item, it's going into this API, right? So ultimately, I'm going to use the API gateway. So let me bring up the diagram. So here's my reference diagram here. So the API gateway, all the requests will go through one URL, right? Everything will make a connection to one point. The API gateway will, blah, 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 blah. Slow down. This is the problem with making videos. I start to get excited and start talking faster, and then I lose track. Because it makes sense in my head, and I have to try and slow myself down enough to talk about it. The API gateway is going to abstract the APIs. So I can have 10, 15, 20 APIs or more sat behind here, but to the Angular client here, there's only one entryway, right? So each request will get routed to the correct API. It will pass forward that token, so all the authentication goes with it. This API gateway can also be set up to ignore requests. So if I'm not authenticated and a request should be authenticated, I can kick it here. I don't have to wait till it gets down to the application stack to do so. So first step is prove the flow through the right API. Second step is get the API added to the gateway and show that it's being configured. For now, I'm using Console and Ocelot. So Ocelot is the API gateway. Console is the kind of the management I'm using to keep track of it all. But I am going to look at different API gateway technologies as I go further forward. Because again, it's the sort of thing that doesn't really matter how it's used, just that it is available and it routes to the correct API. So I can switch this piece out. And overall, that's generally the design I'm going for, right? I'm going for a design that is very much, if I want to change the way something works in my system, I don't have to pull the system apart to fix it or to change it, right? And that's a key component of application design in general. If you're building something of any sort of scale, you don't want to have to go into the guts every single time you want to make a change, because the bigger it is, the more scary that is going to be to break, the more scared you are going to be of it breaking. So you definitely want to make sure you're building an application that is suitable for purpose. So let's go to planning. Let's figure out what that endpoint looks like. Full stack, debug, planning items, console, debug output. Don't need to do it that way. I can go in here. So it's running on 7162, right? So when in my planning item service here, right, I can do private base URL equals HTTPS localhost port 7162. So that's my base URL of the planning item service. I can inject a HTTP client in here. Then I can, and how do I do it over here? Yeah, kind of. So I have an API response. What do I do when I do a planning item? Planning items, planning items. I just get back a 2 or 4 on this one. I don't care about the response necessarily. So I need to feed it 3 pieces of information, and then I need to, yeah. This is going to be public, add new planning item, and it's going to be any. Let's go with any first. And this is going to take. So in the case of the registration service, I passed in a registration object. Where did I put that? Ugh. Let's move that there. Create a class. Not sure about this one. This might be messy. Export interface. We'll see how this goes. This is all going to get refactored once they come to NGRX anyway, so I don't have to worry about it being perfect. But I've obviously got planning items all over the place. So in this instance, I want to be careful. I'm not just creating replicated objects all over the place. And then, because then the more you do that, the more you're going to introduce a problem, right? You're going to introduce a duplicate where you don't want one. So this is going to have a title, which is a string. It's going to have a description, which is a string, and it's going to have a review date, which is a date. Right? And this is going to take a planning item, which is going to be a planning item. Ah, there you go. See? So now I've got my models, and then there's a planning item model over there, and yeah, what does that mean? So the planning item model I'm talking about, that is a view model. But then do you get into that world of, you know, observable, any, right? What do you do, right? Registration. I don't know why I need that there. I don't think I need that there. Let's go and have a look. We're going to do return this http.post, and this is going to go to where's this going to go to? It's going to go to that this.base URL slash, and again, if we look over here, planning items, right? We're going to post 2 planning items. And that's going to be an object, which is going to have, and let's make sure I line this up properly, otherwise I'm going to end up with a title, description. We're not going to worry about assigned user identifier yet. I haven't got any user information in APIs, etc. yet, so we're not going to worry about that. It's not going to hurt me, but it is going to be something that we're going to need later. So this is going to be title equals this equals planning item. Title, description, it's planning item dot description, and review date. Review date. Okay. So now we can inject our planning item service into our constructor over here. added that in, yeah. And then when we save, we are going to submit, and this is going to be so I need to review here. So they're all required. That's okay. We can put validation errors in there. We want to do that. So the difference between this form and the other one is kind of just this promotes, hey, I've completed registration, and the parent kind of keeps track of it all, and then when everything's done, it registers. Are you making details in Angular or just the model? Right now, that's kind of a DTO. That's not necessarily. I'm calling it model, but it's really a DTO. So I'm kind of, again, my naming and my organization is going to be questionable at times because I'm just going to kind of try and tighten this up as I go. One of my big focuses when I do development is I don't want to be scared of changing the code, so I'm not afraid to just go rip things out and start again or do things differently. I think that's a good way of learning, to just don't stop yourself and worry about what is the right way too quickly. But also don't be, oh, I'm scared to touch that because I struggled there. So, yeah, for me, calling that models makes sense because it's kind of the models I use into the service, but it's kind of, again, realistically, that's what I would term on the server side as actually term as an input model. So yeah, it's but I am open to opinions if you have any on what I'm doing there. Why is that? All busted. I have no idea. There you go. Resolution on my monitor was all screwed up then. Okay, so what I need to do over here is if this dot form group that is valid, if this is valid, right, and we need to put some if this dot title dot pristine and this dot title dot not valid div this dot title dot errors dot, go with that for right a second. So if you haven't seen it, Angular 17 also introduces some templating syntax, which is better than ngIf. If you now need to, if you want to use ngIf or ngIf, etc. now, you kind of have to include them as actual pieces in the code. You have to do includes for them. So they've been moved out to description dot pristine and not this dot description dot valid div this dot description. Oh no, this. Oh no, I don't need that. I can do that. I don't need this in this case because I'm in the template, so I don't need to care about this. It's implicit. Description.errors. Actually, and it's in the sake of moving forward, let's view date. So pristine, if you haven't seen it before, is has it actually been changed rather than just being blank. So it avoids you showing errors in the first place. So let's see if that even, right. So if I do that, it does nothing. But if I do that and then come out, now it's showing objects, right? So that is because I know what the error is. I'm not going to mess around with trying to do smart error handling here. Title is required. I haven't created any styles for validation either, so that is description is required. Review date is required. And then on here, this is going to be disabled is not form group not valid. So do that. And we had a style. I think we do have a style for that just to help show that it's validating properly. That's kind of my change there. Class. Not valid. BG primary button. Don't have that. Let's see. Why isn't that actually? Button type equals submit. BG primary button. How to do it? How to do disabled? Disabled should be a style anyway. Disabled is not valid. Module forward, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. Welcome. Hope you're well. Huh. That's weird. You waved in chat and it didn't show my prompter. Wonder if it's just being slow. That's interesting. How's things? By the way, this doesn't matter. What we're going to do is, because it's part of the form group, that's fine. Things are well, you? They're going well. I'm getting stuff done. So, form group equals form group. NG submit equals submit. So we're just right now I'm just kind of trying to get my first new planning item, first form submitting here, and then going to look back at how to do the API gateway, and then maybe try and get the start to get NGRX introduced. I should probably branch at some point as well, because I've tended to do a lot of client-side code without actually committing recently, which is pretty dangerous. So, new planning item. So, Sunday stream. On Sunday stream, we'll get the form submitting, the layout, not the layout, I'm not focused on layout, loading and start clicking NGRX, and this is going to be due by 03/09/24. Now when I hit that, did that try and do anything? No, it did not. That's fine. So form ng submit start registration. That's fine. That's that. Oh, because I didn't do anything with it. That would help, right? This dot service to add new planning item. Title equals this dot title dot value. Description equals this dot title description value. Review date. It's this dot review date dot value. That's as planning item. Oh, actually, it doesn't need that, does it? Dot subscribe. Result goes to this dot slide over dot toggle slide over. So for now, I'm not worrying too much about the eventing around the actual application. I just need it to close to say it's done it, and then the form will be reset. Let's see how well that goes. We go in here, we add Sunday stream. We'll do a Sunday stream, and it will succeed at doing form, API gateway, and NGRX. 03/09/2024. Oh, cause. No. Okay, that's okay. We can live with the calls response, right? That's not terrible. So that is because we go over here. Let's stop the planning items project running. Go over here, and yeah, we have no calls. So always fun. So builder dot services dot add calls. This needs an actual setup. Setup dot. So there is a default policy concept, but I need to do some more research on that because this never seems to work when I do it this way. So I'm going to do it the way I did it originally, and we'll come back around to that one again as a review. I think it's naive to assume that just because something's kind of working that I should leave it there forever, right? So I have to review all these components. I have to review the authentication, authorization, all these pieces. But in the same, if I get stuck on them for too long, I'm never really going to make progress. I'm never going to feel that energy. So again, it's about moving forward, being pragmatic, but also understanding that this application isn't something that I'm going to say, okay, it's done, release it. It's perfect. There's never going to be any bugs, right? So I have to go back over these pieces and review them later. So policies like calls is something you want to verify. Origin with origins, so that's going to be that, right? Oxy Troxy, thank you very much for the follow. Hope you're well. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Allow any header. Policy.allow any method. Right. So we're going to add the calls and the calls piece in there, and then we do use calls down here, and we say default. Right. That's how that works. So now we should be able to start planning items back up and have no real downtime essentially. And that's one of the benefits of this when you're building a distributed system like this. The ability to turn on and off pieces and have them work and go and work on some code, test it, run it, and then start it up, and I can still be in this state. So this may or may not succeed. But the idea is that no, you don't want to work with calls. Okay. Why? Excellent rules. The UI looks good. I'm trying to make it look at least reasonable for now. Again, it's practically, hey, here's the kind of layout I'm going for and building for. So thank you, Chandu. Appreciate it. That did not work though. My calls rule did not fire, or it got rejected. What did I miss? So my bet is that I didn't configure this correct. So let's have a look and look for with origins. Yep. There you go. In tenant management, it works. Somehow I am already following. Good old cause. Well, and thank you for coming back. I appreciate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to planning again, and I bet you that it's that that's causing the problem. So let's start that back up again. So for review, this is kind of what I'm building, right? These are individual components. When data comes in, the data gets stored in a local database. It gets published as integration through Kafka. The GraphQL DB over here is consuming that, stores that data. So then the Angular view will pull from that. So I am definitely achieving command and query responsibilities segregation in this application stack, because it's yeah. There we go. So that planning item works. So now, is this a side project? Yeah, right now. It is a product that I plan to build, right? I am building it as if it is going to be 100% for real. So I'm treating it with all the respect I would give a, well, with constraints, obviously. I'm trying to treat it as if it's 100% a professional project. It is hard to do that when you're doing it, you know, on your side stuff, side project stuff. But yeah. So overall, there you go. There's our planning item. So now if we refresh that UI, go back to planning, there's our Sunday stream item. So we have data flowing in. We can query it back out. Progress. So the goal of this UI. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to think about how do I want this to work ultimately, right? So what happens is these planning items come down for this user, right? That's the ultimate goal. Right now it's just this tenant, but it's things this user cares about. This is one view. What I want to do is this is kind of a table view as I'm proposing it, and then a card-based view as well. You do visual design because the colors and font layout are good. Currently, I'm trying to get better at it. No, I don't. I wish I did. This is just kind of colors that I like. It's nice and easy on the eye. It's not dark, not light. So I'm trying to. Again, what I want to do with this is get it close enough to what I envision, and then see if I can find some UI UX experts to kind of give it a brief look over. But I need to get it to slightly functional first before I do that, because I'm going to have to be willing to part with money at that point. Unless I find someone who streams that sort of stuff and is willing to do that on stream as a side project. But yeah. The Coppinger does UX stuff. Yeah. So I need to update it, but I'm trying to use Figma to kind of design some of this stuff as well. This is kind of what I'm going for. I want to kind of do the planning items as cards. Ultimately, this is my first go at trying to use Figma, right? So I was more focused on the UI UX for the login. So if I go and sign out, this is what I ended up with, and this is what I tried to design, right? So here you can sign in, or you can proceed and register a new account, and then when it gets completed, you'll sign up, etc. So sign in. This is I'm reminded of Deflux. Tenant management. password. Where are you? Pop up, pop up, pop up. There you go. So when I sign in, it will navigate me into the application. So let's see. So you have a workflow. I just straight jump into writing Tailwind and Angular code. I'm trying to develop a workflow because obviously this application is not a tiny application, right? This is just one little piece of one much larger application. And end up with something that works but does not look decent. I think that if you get the working components down first, so what I'm trying to do right now is I realize that if I just keep building this application on stream and I'm just building code in the background, right? People don't really see what I'm trying to do, right? So building some UI will allow me to not only kind of figure out what I want to do with the UI and how I want the workflows to flow, but also allow me to kind of experiment with the entire stack as a whole, right? I designed the wireframe UI workflow, then write code, yeah. But the problem is if you design the UI first, it's kind of a chicken and egg, right? If you design the UI before you design the backend, then your backend is going to be influenced by your UI, right? Because your decisions you make on the UI are going to change how you're going to store data. They're going to change how you think about where the data belongs, because you've kind of made some implicit assumptions about ownership of data. Because what you see on a screen is not necessarily where the data is stored, right? So those are the things I'm kind of mindful of. And it's kind of why I went with this layout this time, right? I've not experimented with this sort of, I've long wanted to try this sort of thing, but it was kind of like the right time to do this where, okay, let's treat this as if I'm going to develop it for a real application. That's how it started. Then it became, you know what? I want to write an application. So I started with APIs, and I said I would focus on the API thing. So I need to do a better job of describing what this application is. This application is intended to be an Agile project management platform, right? So if you've worked in software, you've done Agile, you've seen sprint boards, you've seen swim lanes, you've seen story pointing or whatever, estimations, whatever you want to call them. You've seen those flows. You've probably also experienced the pain of Agile when it's done wrong because it's overmanaged or the pointing just becomes useless, or the teams have had the points generalized across them, etc. So there's all sorts of pain points in there. So what I'm trying to build is a system that provides ticketing, planning, and stories, right? So planning is not stories. Planning is the art of refining the requirements for stories before they actually get put to stories. And everything in my system will have a review date. The idea being that accountability is a big key. And what I'm actually building is more focused for the management side of things than it is the developer side of things, because ultimately the developer shouldn't actually care about most of this, right? The developer should be able to get on with the work they're needing to do. So creating specific views for developers, swim lanes don't matter to a developer. Why does a developer care about whether it's in the backlog or in progress or whatever? They just care, I'm working on it, right? Or what can I work on, right? So I have a lot of opinions about that process, and that is what I'm building. So I'm starting with planning because it's a good piece to show most of the components, and then I'll move back to ticketing because I think getting user information in to your system, like requirements and challenge and problems they're having, and determining whether they need more features or they need just fixes, etc., is a key component of the application. I think it's wrong to ignore getting user input. And I think ticketing is that user input for the most part. And then, promoting up from ticketing to planning to stories, etc. So that is what I'm working on overall. I do UI first because I think about usability. The product I work on at work was designed by software engineers, and a lot of UX constraints are because the backend was developed for this. But there are huge user pain points. Right. Developers should never do. Developers, unless they are very, very, very talented, I don't believe should ever develop the UI, UX. You know, this is a project for me, right? I don't have the money or ability to just hire people to help with this. So I have no choice in this case. But what I am building is something where I am not afraid to rip the front end off once I've got these pieces working. So that's why I'm building the UI in the way I am. Is it's going to be functionally usable, but again, once I've got the patterns and practices down, then it's not too difficult to change again later. Microservice. I wouldn't say I'm following a microservice architecture. This is more, I think the term would be mini monolith. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of breaking things down into what I'm just referring to as components, right? So planning, tenant management, these are components. Tickets is a component right now. And then view is actually all the pieces for the GraphQL database, right? It's the data that's showing. If I had reporting would be a component here. 1 second, I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I had a canine invasion. The diagram of data store for each service. So this diagram here is more intended just for me to try and highlight the fact that I'm publishing these pieces into Kafka to consume them and being pulled through to my read database, right? These are, I could break these. It's almost a vertical slice, kinda. The thing is, I find that if I start trying to align to someone's terminology about how my application works, I start questioning whether I'm doing it right, and I get stuck on, oh, well, maybe I should call this or move this here. And my general practice with software development is, as long as it feels comfortable and the code doesn't feel like I'm hacking it. So this is kind of aligned to clean architecture right now, because we did do some work over the course of several streams to kind of arrange it in a clean architecture style. And the reason I went with that was because it kind of made sense for people coming into the stream, considering the size of the thing I'm working on. If they can align their understanding of clean architecture with what I'm doing, they can kind of say, hey, you're a little off here. We think that, based upon the circle, that should live there. And that encourages debate or discussion, right? Because the reality is, when you're developing any systems, most developers are not thinking about the architecture. They're thinking about the job they've got to do. And if your system can't change, if your system can't flex for a new requirement in any way, shape, or form, then that's where the bugs come in, right? Because people will make it work to do the new job. So I think that's kind of key as I'm developing, that I'm willing to change things. So if I start aligning to the likelihood is, based upon my experience so far, right, as I'm developing, I'm going to align to those patterns because they're just a name put on something that's kind of natural anyway, right? So it's but for right now, the goal is to keep these as general components, and if I do need to break them off, I can do. Things like my consumers here, right? My Kafka consumers down here, right? These, I have receivers for tenant and tenant user. And then in the view, right, I have more consumers, right? I have 4 receivers here because I'm receiving more information. These are built in such a way that I've kind of created some library stuff around the edges that when I actually go to deploy these, if I was to deploy these in Kubernetes, these can actually be broken up into independent. Yes, all the code's bundled up every time, so you end up with a load of all of them. But you can actually say, okay, well, this service is going to start up and use this topic, and this is going to start up and use this topic, and it's going to build them that way. So these can be scaled out independently. So it's not just one service consumes everything. It can actually be scaled out wide. So yeah, overall, not microservice, more mini monolith at this point, but not, again, not afraid to break it up even further. Okay, so yeah, and things that I use around the edges here, by the way, things like the Kafka pieces, I actually do share those. So for the most part, the software is not open source, right? Because this is a lot of work for me, and it's a project that I'm willing to share on stream, right? No one's just going to pick this up and start building it, and build their own version of this, because I'm not sharing. Um, um, I'm not sharing a lot of the code, but things like the mediator outbots and things like the Kafka extensions. So I have a library here for all the Kafka pieces I use. So when I publish or consume from Kafka, the application, I have the mediator outbots. So this mediator outbots, what happens is when I do things within my domain, it publishes notifications inside of the mediator library, which domain events essentially. They get published within this application stack, and then I can consume them. So it outboxes them so that they can be wrapped up in a transaction and still roll back. And then the mediator validation, that's just me allowing myself to put some validators in between. So when I'm adding a support ticket or whatever, there's actually validation that occurs between. So some of these are shared. The Kafka pieces in this application aren't actually using the library, but ultimately they are available. So most of the pieces I'm using with a bit of refinement, because again, when I go to set up Kafka, I can set up the producer, and I can configure the topics. And what happens is if you publish this event, it will go to this topic. So that's all wired up for me. So those sorts of things are freely available on my GitHub, which is linked in the cards on Twitch and on YouTube. So you're more than welcome to go and check those things out if they help. Okay, so we have a planning item. It is working. So let's probably should make a commit. It's probably wise at this point to do that. And again, if you have questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, again, I am more than happy to talk about this. Sorry for that flicker then, it was tooling. What I'm going for right this second is I'm going to see if I can find where I have my stories tracked. This guy, create landing page. Yeah, this is a bit further on than create landing page at this point, isn't it? I've got a little bit more than landing page developed here. I'm going to say that's done. And let's go back. I've got I'm not going to worry too much about showing this screen. It's just my story stuff. Planning items, provide landing page when logged in. Is that sub item or is that a creative liquid sky front end? That's kind of being done. Log into Auth Studio through client, that's being done. Okay, so let's do this. 29th, I think I should close that one out. Create a new one. New sprint. The NGRX sprint, we'll call this one. So what I'm doing is right now I'm using JetBrains Space for what I'm doing, right? So my apologies for kind of thinking that would be quicker there, right? So I'm using JetBrains Space to track this. Because I'm doing a lot of things ad hoc, it doesn't always align to a story. How long are you streaming today? I gotta step away for a few. I am probably streaming for about another hour. I think I can get away with another hour. So let's start the NGRX sprint. So what I've been doing is I've kind of been using these to just bundle up features and do a pull request so I can keep the code from getting messy. Okay. So the irony is I'm creating an agile project management system, but I don't want to use project management to track the items I'm doing. Now, once I get to a point of I have the pieces in place and I can start building more meaningful stories and more meaningful epics as such, then I think I will be able to do. But I think at that point, I might actually be able to use my own system to track my own work because it's starting to take shape. Right. Add NGRX. So add planning item from UI. So should be able to add a planning item from UI. You're never going to guess this is going to be done, right? Planning UI. Then the next would be to add NGRX to planning items. So this one's going to be the harder one, right? This is going to be the bit wider. Planning items, UI, NGRX. We're gonna add that as a tag because I've got a feeling that that's going to come back and bite me later on. So we're going to move that over there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create a branch. It's going to be feature T47, add planning item from UI, add planning item. You can check out that branch, and now we can add all this in, right? I'm not going to worry too much about some of this stuff, right? Yeah, it's a big commit, but it's not. Again, this isn't set in stone, right? This is stuff that I'm about to come back around and start pulling it apart because NGRX is going to be how do I use the store? How do I do this? How do I do that? So this screen is just kind of meant to be, hey, here's how I do it traditionally. So the pieces are in place, so I know what I'm recreating, right? If I go into NGRX and I start trying to build, so there's a few pieces that I want to aim for here, right? First order of business is being able to put the planning item in the store when I save it, right? So that the view immediately shows it, which is going to create a trigger trigger a challenge of, okay, well, then when I do save it in the backend, how do I update that in the backend, right? Do I refresh the store? How does that work? I've got some lessons to learn. Now, I could build this entire UI the way I would traditionally, right? I could just keep calling APIs and doing all sorts of other stuff. And when I do an update, I just do a refresh event, and yeah, everything works and great. Because I'm querying it all from the back end again. But in reality, because of the way this is built, these events, these things, when I trigger add planning item, it might be 3 hours before this gets processed. Primarily because this system might be down, right? So I'm now building a distributed system, so I get new challenges, right? So what does that mean for the application? How do I handle that? So these are the lessons I'm about to learn, right? I don't have all the answers for this piece, but I think that's how I learn, right? I'm gonna challenge myself to, okay, can I do this? Can I make it? Can I make these events come through? And then ultimately, you can in GraphQL kind of subscribe to the actual data. So how do I do that? Because then what would happen is when the client is connected to GraphQL, is connected, and then when the data changes, that event fires and the store in the backend is refreshed. That would be pretty cool, right? Because then the data's kind of real time updating. But then I need to kind of figure out, okay, well, coordination, how do I do that sort of stuff? Maybe it's when this fires and saves, this sends back its GUID so that this is, because it's not a fire and forget, right? This is never a fire and forget. This is, hey, I've completed what I need to complete. So maybe this fires back its identifier down, and the client receives that and marks that as its kind of coordination. And now it's got a reference if it updates it. Okay, so add planning items view. Display planning items. Poorly grouped planning items. That all needs to be redone. Introduce slide over form. Add planning item from UI. Okay, let's commit and push that. Let's stop running as well just to make sure, because there's about to be some more changes. Two warnings. Commit and push. That's that. Okay, good. Okay. So that puts us working there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here. I need to add something else, right? The other item to work on is move planning and registration behind gateway. This is a little bit more involved than it might seem, right? Update. So this is add planning and registration APIs gateway. Update client to use gateway address. Right, fine to me. I've said it before. I do have a friend that may at some time work on this with me. So that's why there's another name there. Their name is protected. So we're gonna do T49 next. Let's do T47. So I still go through the process of doing a PR. I don't just merge this in manually. I do a PR. I make sure I'm doing at least enough to validate. And the unit tests do run as part of a Git, the GitHub action. So nope, that's not me. That's someone actually called Liquid Sky and Git. That's cool. That's Python. Not very often by the looks of it. So once I get to my first version that is workable, main is going to get updated, right? That is the goal. Create a pull request. I'm not using GitHub projects or anything to track these items like I'm water, drink water. So no challenge there. All checks have passed, which means all the unit tests are passing, right? So you can go over here and validate 19 files. So the date range grouping, that is a basic and actually useless attempt at grouping them. That's this whole concept of showing you what you have to work on. So that is today, tomorrow, this week, next week, etc. That's the intention of that, because again, the thing I'm doing that's different here is I'm making sure that every single item in the system has to have a review date. If it doesn't have a review date, anybody who's subscribed to it will get notified when the review date expires. So it is in the best interest of everyone to make sure the right conversations happen so the review dates get pushed out appropriately. And again, I've got to figure out the noise aspect of that, because obviously if you've got 32,000 items in your system because you've got 10 different teams and you're adding all these things, the sheer noise in the system of publishing, oh, by the way, yesterday 1,500 items didn't have their review dates expired, and oh, there's 2,500 people, whatever. I'm exaggerating numbers just because it kind of highlights the challenge, right? Then all those notifications have to publish. What does it mean? How does that work, right? So having some sort of reporting, like per project or something like that, might actually be more appropriate, so that every day this, hey, these projects, by the way. And one of the things I've considered is the ability for when you say, hey, I care about this thing, is saying why you care about the thing and who needs to know, like which team member needs to be told, hey, you need to do something and follow up, right? So yeah, that is very much I think planning as well does not have the concept of teams necessarily. Planning is kind of a categorization thing, so there's no like necessary maybe it does. Maybe I want to rethink that idea. It does have teams. All of them have teams. The challenge is who shares boards, because this is left over from the mock-up, but it's not actually a bad idea, right? Because a user could be in multiple teams, and initiatives would be cross-team as well. So yeah, that might be something I have to consider. But anyway, that's what this grouping is meant to be. It's a poor effort, but it gets the idea, and it prevents me from forgetting about it entirely. Okay, add planning item component, that's the UI. So again, I've created a form for add planning item. And it wraps up all its behavior, right? It does the actual add. So I could actually inject the add planning item into any part of the system right now. The planning module has all the pieces. The planning items component gets the planning items. The component as TS. There's the other planning item in the service. The service does the call, again, the UI. I've got to look at environment variables. Registration. We got the slide over component. That I could have added. Call stuff. Ooh, that's interesting. unchanged files with check annotations. And delete the tickets when. So there's some tests. There's some code. We'll have to review them afterwards. Those aren't preventing the application from building. I'm not panicked about those things. So into development, one commit, add. Delete that branch. Now we go back over here. We go to development. We check that out. We fetch the changes. Go here. We update. I'll pull all the latest changes in there. And then we delete a branch. Keep things clean. Okay. So T47 can move to done. We've got that done in the sprint. That's fine. Kind of arbitrary at this point, but it's more the idea. So let's do T49. So I'm going to actually do the branch here. New branch, feature, T49, move APIs into gateway. So again, ultimately the gateway doesn't matter, right? The gateway here is just, or rather the specific implementation of the gateway doesn't matter, right? Just that it is an API gateway. Now I've built some code because I'm using Ocelot as my gateway, and I need to register my independent APIs with the gateway, or rather with Ocelot, no, with console. So I'm using HashiCorp's console as my kind of tracking of the API. And then that also stores the configuration. So the API gateway goes to console to get its configuration and resolves all the addresses. So the gateway doesn't even need to know about the IPs or whatever of the individual services. It just needs to know, hey, this service is currently connected on this, and I can send a message to that. And then I can kind of figure out the routing. And I built that as part of my game tracking application, which I haven't actually finished. So yeah. Now, I think if I start up the application, let's do a full stack start. And again, I can start this at this point. This should all start up. Nothing's broken. So first step is to make sure the APIs themselves are starting up and registering themselves with console. That means I've got the configuration in there and I can start to build out the actual the content file. So console is both a kind of a service monitor and it's also a key value store. So it uses the key value store aspect of it to store the configuration so that when Ocelot starts up, it pulls its configuration from console 2, which means that it's all stored in that one place. And that's obviously distributable as well. So let's move that off there so we don't have that shared. And I am going to, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go down to Docker here so you can see console here. So if I open this up, right, what you'll see is the tickets API is registered, right? So the tickets API is started up, it's on port 7031 and it's running, right? So I know that that's my example of how to get it up and running. So I go to the application, go to tickets here, go to my app settings. I have some console configuration here, right? So this is, hey, here's your health check. Here's your, here's the name you're going to go in there as, and an ID for the service, and then health interval. So this will actually keep asking, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? So this has health checks in it, right? So I use health checks, and this just returns true. That's what this means. It means, yeah, return true. One of the things I'm going to do into this is I'm going to build the ability for this to check any APIs or whatever. So I can add in to every API. Not only is your application up and running, but are your dependencies actually functioning as well? So make them kind of part of the health checks of the system. So if Kafka is unavailable from a specific system or it's erroring, I can validate that. So I kind of want to look into doing that as well. So as part of the health checks. And that means that when I actually get to that point, I can actually build out dashboards that will show me the actual true health of the entire system. Open telemetry and stuff is good for some of that. And I do plan to use open telemetry, but adding in the health checks for, are my messages backed up? Is my outbox kind of slow, right? Are things like that not processing correctly? Those are things that individual applications would be good to know. So if something is backed up, you don't have a problem there. I just realized I probably talked through 3 minutes of ads before, so if you were hanging out through those ads, I do appreciate it. That was not my intention to keep talking, but I don't get a notification up on screen that ads are running. So here we have ad console. This is kind of my configuration stuff. Welcome back, Joe. And console service discovery. So this is the piece that adds console in there. Then I think I don't do anything else other than add the health checks. So let's go and add that into the pieces. So what we do is we go and we need planning to have the same pieces, right? So if we go to planning, it shouldn't have it. Yeah, it doesn't have these pieces, right? It does have health checks. I've set up health checks, so that's okay. So let's stop planning, right? And then we need to add. So this is this. So these are extensions that I've built just to add in these pieces because Ocelot. Oh no, this is not my extensions. Okay. Let's do that. That is in my, yeah. Come on. There you go. So that's this method is in mine. Okay, this is mine, right? So this is going to be, I need to copy that. I need to go, oh, I've already got it set up. So I added it, but I didn't add it. Okay. So now when I start this, is that going to register itself? Let's see. We go back over to console. There's planning items. Okay. So console now has planning items. So we also need to do the same with tenant management. And I think that's it for now. Teams is something, again, I'm trying to consider how that actually pans out, right? Stop tenant management, go to tenant management. Did I do the same here is the question. No, here I definitely didn't add it. Okay. So this address here is what I'm going to pull from here. So 7194. 7194. That's the actual service discovery. So that's console. So I don't need to worry about that. This is the tenant management API. Health checks enabled. You can set that anyway. So if I do true there, I think this will fail right this second because I think it's not really, it doesn't work in this environment, but it does work in yeah, it does work in the distributed environment. I did get this, I've used this in Kubernetes before, so okay, add that, reference the project, and then we can add install the package. Okay, now we can start tenant management back up. Add that back in. And what we should see is that tenant management appears in our dashboard. And we'll see. I would imagine it's going to fail. It's going to say it's in bad shape after a few seconds because it's going to do a health check. I don't know if that's going to function properly. Maybe it will. There we go. Okay. So our APIs. Oh, there we go. See? Yeah, the health check doesn't quite work the same way. Connection refused. Okay. Localhost. Oh, it's because it can't resolve back. If I use the Docker thing there, I think it would resolve. That's why it's not working. Okay, so we can just stop tenant management again. I don't need that to function right this second, so I'm not gonna go spending time trying to fix a problem that's not there. But yeah, I was right about why. Okay, so let's start that up. Okay, so with that up and running, which it will be very shortly, there's another piece in here. So the key value store in here is another part of console. Kubernetes has all these concepts built into it, so you don't have to use console. It was I was using this because I picked up Ocelot. I was trying to figure out how to use an API gateway effectively. I was trying to figure out how to put all these pieces together, and I was kind of just stumbling through and learning my way, right? As you do. So what I need to do here now is I need to kind of create a configuration. So if I look, so one of the pieces that should be started in this list, I look at internal running. My API gateway, is that in my list of? No, API gateway is not started, right? So this is good. So API gateway, this is very simple, right? This uses Ocelot. Ocelot is the natural API gateway library. Right, let's go make sure there's no updates to be done. Yep, Ocelot 23. And what I'm going to do is that ultimately I'm going to give the client the address of my Ocelot gateway API, right? So this is going to start up on 7285, right? So everything in the client is going to be referring to 7285, and then this is going to do all this routing, right? So I did do some extension stuff to add. Well, no, this is built into Ocelot, right? It knows how to pull this configuration out. I just got to figure out how to Ocelot configuration. Yeah. So this is the service provider. So Ocelot can pull its information from all sorts of different places. I'm just going to pull it from console in this instance. Again, Kubernetes has a lot of this stuff built in, right? And the API gateway, there are .NET versions. What I do is I create over here an Ocelot configuration. And then I'm going to have to go and do a bit of learning because it's been a while since I did this. So Ocelot API gateway. Ocelot read the docs. Okay. This looks very different than last time. So what we need to do is configuration. We need to set up the routes of the objects that will tell us how to treat an upstream request. The global configuration is a bit hacky and allows overrides of routes. It's useful if you don't want to manage lots of route specific settings. Here's an example route configuration. Okay. This is where this gets a bit messy. Multiple environments, merging configuration files, store configuration in Ocelot, in console, that's what I'm doing. Right, that's that part, configuration key. Yeah, we've got that configured. Okay, so routing. This is the bare minimum, right? That's what I was looking for. Okay, so what I'll do is once I've got this working, I will store it as an actual configuration in my repository, because this doesn't carry any information with it that's private. It's all savable. But what you do is you do this. So again, let's put this into. I'm gonna bring it out into an editor that is a little bit friendlier for this. Save Ocelot. No, it's not Ocelot. Yeah, it's Ocelot configuration. I'm gonna do that in. I'm gonna do that in D dev projects. No, prototypes. I probably should move this application out of prototypes at this point. Source test scripts. Ocelot configuration. Liquid Sky. There you go. Format document. Okay. So what you have here is you have a configuration that says, okay, upstream, it can post these things. It can do these things. Here's the template it's going to upstream, so going to the API, and then downstream, so from the client. So again, I'm going to put everything behind the API, but what this does mean is that in the actual individual APIs, I don't end up having to have, my endpoint doesn't need to be API/planning items, right? That's kind of redundant, right? So here I can do planning items, right? And I can allow post, and that's all I need to do, post. And downstream is HTTPS, and this is just post to API/planning items. And then how do I configure that? That is not totally correct. Ocelot, the downstream is a collection that defines the host and port of any downstream service that you wish to forward requests to. Usually this will require just contain a single entry, but sometimes you don't have a load balance request. Downstream is upstream. I think I got those reversed. Yeah, I think I got them reversed. This will post everything upstream. Okay, yeah, I think I reversed them. Upstream is from the client, downstream is to the server. I think I want that in a slightly different way, right? I want that kind of, and we'll test it, right? I think I want them kind of reversed. Because I think here what I can do is actually specify a service, because it will resolve the service, I believe. Upstream host, in order to use this feature, there's a way of doing this, I think, of specifying. So I don't know if I want to routing upstream host. GraphQL. We're not worried about GraphQL right now. GraphQL is going to be something that's going to be a little bit difficult because I want it to go through the same gateway. So we're going to have to worry about that later. But configuration wise, store configuration in console. There's a way in the configuration. I think I can do planning API, whatever I called it, planning items API, planning API. Yeah, I call it planning items API. I think I can do the service name there. I don't know if I need to specify the post. thing. So it's easy to test because what we do is we go and say, hey, Ocelot. There you go. Save that. Then we need to start the gateway. Running API gateway. Let's see if that starts up first. Because it's got to pull its configuration down, right? Now, in theory, I can change that configuration anytime I want now, and it will pull it. So now if I go to, in theory, if I go to, I need a token from here. He says, as he closes it. Need a token from here. Copy that value. Go to planning items here. Place that in there. Through gateway. Right. So now if I go to the gateway IP 7285 instead of my IP, I go to API/planning items. Now posting this should still function by gateway. Okay. Now did it hit here? Yeah, it hit here. Error connected to the downstream service. No such host is known. That's the problem. So, so it did try and resolve it. So it hit the gateway, and it tried to resolve it. Ocelot console resolve service. There's a way of doing this. I can't remember. When building blog creation website, is it good to have a rich text editor included with it, or just regular forms? I mean, if you're building it for blogs, then you probably want some at least markdown syntax in there. So I would imagine rich text editors will give you the markdown syntax, or you could use a text field, and just say you can use markdown and then provide it. Okay, I want to get this. I want to get this at least working today. Dynamic route service name, downstream service, downstream scheme. So, what this means in the configuration here, by the way, that means that yeah, downstream is the planning items, upstream is HTTP. Yeah, that might trip me up after downstream host and ports host. So I don't think that's correct. I think I want to do. There's something else I'm missing there. Specify service in route instead of host. What's a lot? Console. There's a way of doing this. I know there is a way of doing this. Service name. There we go. Service name instead of host. I can do this and do service name, planning items API. Save that. Now, does that work? Yes. There we go. So that allows me to route the request. That should be saved, by the way. I can validate that in a second. So planning items. There you go. Oh, the first one got through as well. Oh no, it got through. That produced the event twice. Why did that produce the event twice? Interesting. That's interesting. Planning items through gateway. It produced it twice to the view. So that's an interesting challenge. So, but that's an item potency problem, right? I need to figure out how to make sure, because there's some rules there that, about validating the data, that I probably need to put some locks in place so that I'm actually handling them properly. But this is now, so this route will go through the gateway. So we can go and modify the client at this point. And it should be as simple as going to the service over here, right? So we go to our service, our planning item service. And it should be as simple as saying 7285 here, and then go into API planning item. So now we should be able to add a planning item in here, and it should still function, right? From the client through the gateway. This is the client now creating a planning item through gateway. 03, doesn't matter what data I enter here right this second, 2024. I'm going to create that. Yeah, so that went to 7285 planning items, right? So now I should be able to refresh that and it should eventually show. Yep, from the client through the gateway. There we go. Interesting. Oh, that's because they're the last. That's because that data's passed, right? So there's the first gateway component set up. Let's go and set the second one up, and then we can call that done for now. So again, it should be as simple as, so that would be, go back to here. So the hardest part for me is this part where I've got to make sure that I commit it, right? But we should be able to do upstream HTTP method is post. We don't have, so one of the things I did notice is if we're doing any form of get, etc., then options and stuff is going to be needed to go through there, I think, unless they've fixed that. Yeah, you start to specify options. So the upstream path template again is here, API. Now again, this allows me to obscure what it is I'm calling as well, so I can rename things here, but I'm not going to for the purpose of this one. I'm just going to go to tenant management and look at my endpoint. The endpoint's register, right? So we're going to do API register, because I could call this onboarding or something like that. It doesn't matter what I call this. Downstream path template, it's /register. Downstream scheme is still HTTPS. This is useful because if you're using Kubernetes, then maybe you actually are offloading the HTTPS here. So everything before this is HTTPS traffic, but then when it goes down to the individual clients, they're not, because they're behind that Kubernetes wall. They are HTTP, so you can kind of say, hey, now it's actually HTTP going forward, and it will do all those pieces as well. You can also require the authentication. So here, these are unauthenticated requests. You can make the request through the gateway and get bounced at the server. This doesn't replace the authentication because I won't want to do that, but it does allow you to make sure that you're actually getting rid of that unauthenticated request sooner, or non-authenticated request. So anyone new to the stream, anyone joining, if you have questions about what I'm doing, if you want to know more about what the project is, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm always happy to answer questions. I normally do stream Monday to Friday, 719 Eastern US time. Weekend streams are not guaranteed, but I do like doing them when I have the option to do them. So, okay, so we save that one now. And now we should be able to go back here. And here, we start to make this a little bit friendlier because now we don't have, right, that. So now we should be able to go out here, sign out, go through registration again. So this would be John Smith. This needs to be, we need to go back and get our actual password. Proceed. And this is friendly forms are us. 123 Main Street. City is Hoboken, New Jersey. I don't know what it is. Let's click country. United States. Register that. That should go through. Let's see if it did. I didn't see an error there on the client. Console registration failed. Okay, it did fail. Okay. Why did it fail? Let's find out. API gateway. Debug. That is noise that I don't want to have there. Okay. Planning items, register post. It identified it didn't need it. Let's go back here and register again. Did it hit our breakpoint? No. Let's make sure that started up correctly. Did I call, the other question is, did I call it Tenant Management API? I called it Tenant Management API. So again, that supports scaling, so I could have dozens of them running, and this tool will actually give me an overview of what the status they're in. So this is the instances, etc. running. That's not, I don't need that -2, that's a internal thing. So it will resolve tenant management API, goes to API register, goes to register. That should function. It looks like it's not getting through the gateway though. Right? Because it's oh, hold on. Authorize. Why is it authorizing anything? What is an clear all that. Yeah. What does that do? Why are you registering it? Why are you authorizing anything? And what's it? What? It's going towards 0 when I hit register. That shouldn't be happening. It should be hitting here. I don't want to change this. Sources. Step 1. Landing component. So it's definitely getting there because it's saying registration failed, right? Let's go into registration service. So registration service is shared. No, it's services registration service. It should be hitting here. So it's hitting there. Let's go in here, right? It's trying to pass that. Let's go into HTTPS localhost 7285 / API / register. I don't get why that's a challenge. Gotta figure out how to get everything back into the services tab because it does make it a lot more readable. API gateway. Back to Ocelot. API register, go through post. Unless it's because I'm feeding a token in and it's kind of giving me the authorized piece, but I can't avoid that. But it's like it's sending the authorized, but I don't need it authorized. We had this working. So again, it shouldn't be going to auth 0 with this at all because there's no need for it to be doing that. It's as if this is firing an auth 0 requirement, but it's not actually hitting my thing because this is coming back. Yeah, you're good. Right. Most perturbing. But it looks like it's hitting the server side. Huh. Oh well. It's not quite the progress I wanted to see today. But in general, we're getting there, right? That's the point. So what I want to do is just once more. So I wanted to get to NGRX today on stream, primarily because it would be a good challenge to get further forward. But obviously that's not going to happen right second because I do have to start finishing up. But the goal is with NGRX, right? When I connect to the service, this information should flow down into my store, right? If I'm understanding the Redux stuff properly, right? This is going to be a big learning barrier, which is why I wanted to do this part first, right? This is part one of the learning. Get this functioning so it's doing the things I want to do, and then I can expand out into the other things. I can plan them out more from the client perspective, right? But the components itself should be pulling its data from the store. When I make a request to get data, it should pull it through the service. So again, in terms of the query side of things, everything should come through here, get updated. When I add something, I should be able to send it off and then kind of update it in the background with its ID, which I may need to provide to make sure everything's continuous. And then the UI stays, it keeps all its information local, and it's usable that way. So if they change it, it can be posted, and even if they haven't received it back yet, it's got the coordinating UI ID, so it can do those things. So once I've got those pieces in place, that starts giving me the ability to move further forward quicker, right? Because then I know what patterns I'm using, I know what pieces I'm using to get the data. I can validate them all, and I can start building out the extra pieces of the application, and then I can start refining what do I want to see in the application, because I think that will definitely come into play in terms of my design of my stores and stuff. But I've got to learn those pieces. So I did want to get to them on stream today. Unfortunately, that's just not but we did get some progress made, right? That form is submitting, right? We can add a planning item into the system from this. It will go through. We validated it goes through the gateway, so those pieces are up and running now. I don't have to now have separate separate addresses in my client hosts. I can start to have I can start to look at environment configurations on the client side where I can say, okay, I'm using dev, I'm using production or whatever. I can actually split out different configurations, and the app's a little bit more flexible that way as well. Because right now it's obviously hard coded. So yeah, I mean, the app's coming together, right? The app is doing exactly what I want it to do, and I'm getting a lot of stuff in here, which is really rewarding. So I need to go and make some food. It's my turn to make dinner, so I need to get that done. I don't see any other dev streamers doing anything. I'm more than happy to raid into someone doing something that's cool. If anyone's got any suggestions, I'm more than happy to do that. If not, I'm going to take you over to a game dev stream, which is kind of crazy, but lots of, which I think some of you may be aware of, Zetalex. But I appreciate the lurkers today. Yeah. Let's have a look who's in chat. Sausage Drum Alert, Dark Fox, Mr. Jones. Okay. So let's raid over to Settlix. And you're in there anyway, so I will be back again tomorrow. We're going to do Water Drink Water tomorrow, so if you haven't looked at that yet, Water Drink Water is a viewer-friendly stream project. It's not this massive application. That is an application built for being friendly to newcomers or experienced developers alike. Kani, thank you very much. Thank you for hanging out. Getting kind of late for you, right? Got work tomorrow. And yeah, I'll raid over to Seto, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care, all. Thank you very much for hanging out. I appreciate it. Bye.